The world is watching with bated breath. Every news outlet, every government, every citizen is glued to their screens. The Middle East, a region long marked by conflict, a crucible of ancient rivalries and modern-day tensions, now faces a new and potentially devastating crisis: the looming specter of open war between Israel and Iran. This is not just another skirmish, this is a potential powder keg that could ignite the entire region. For years, these two nations have engaged in a dangerous dance, a shadow war fought in the dark corners of the world, through covert operations, clandestine meetings, and the silent work of intelligence agencies, relentless cyber attacks targeting critical infrastructure and sensitive data, and fierce proxy battles waged on distant battlefields, far from their own borders. Now the gloves are off. The conflict is out in the open, a dangerous escalation that threatens to destabilize the entire region. The roots of this conflict run deep, intertwined with decades of mistrust, ideological clashes, and geopolitical maneuvering. It's easy to forget that before 1979, Israel and Iran actually had diplomatic ties, a relationship built on mutual interests and strategic alignment. But the Islamic Revolution irrevocably changed everything, ushering in a new era of hostility and animosity. The revolution transformed Iran into Israel's fiercest and most implacable enemy, a shift that continues to shape the region to this day. Anti-Israel ideology, fueled by religious fervor and political ambition, became a central tenet of Iran's foreign policy, dictating its actions on the global stage. This ideological clash has been fueling decades of intense hostility, creating a volatile and dangerous environment in the Middle East. To further its goals, Iran has meticulously built a vast network of proxies, including Hezbollah in Lebanon, Hamas in Gaza, and the Houthis in Yemen, arming, training, and funding them to exert pressure on Israel without engaging in direct military confrontation. This strategy has kept Israel under constant threat, forcing it to divert resources and attention to defending its borders and citizens. But the immediate trigger for this potential war is Iran's rapidly advancing nuclear program, a development that has sent shockwaves through the region and the world. For Israel, an Iranian nuclear bomb is not just a strategic challenge, it's an existential red line, a threat to its very survival. Years of painstaking diplomatic negotiations, aimed at curbing Iran's nuclear ambitions, have ultimately failed to produce a lasting solution. And repeated intelligence warnings, painting a grim picture of Iran's progress, have convinced Israeli leaders that time has run out, that decisive action is needed. Faced with this looming threat, they faced a stark and agonizing choice: act now, with all the inherent risks and consequences, or risk national survival in the face of a nuclear-armed Iran. The stakes could not be higher. At the heart of this escalating crisis, a crisis that threatens to destabilize the entire region, lies Iran's persistent and increasingly concerning nuclear program. This program has been the subject of intense international scrutiny and debate for years. Tehran consistently claims that its nuclear ambitions are purely for peaceful purposes, asserting that its enrichment activities are intended solely for energy production and medical isotopes. However, a growing body of evidence, gathered by international intelligence agencies and nuclear watchdogs, strongly suggests that Iran's true intentions extend far beyond these stated peaceful aims, pointing to a covert ambition to develop nuclear weapons. The program's history is one deeply shrouded in secrecy and deception, a deliberate strategy to conceal its true nature from the prying eyes of the international community. This includes the construction of hidden facilities, built deep underground to withstand potential attacks and evade detection. It also involves the accumulation of undeclared materials, kept off the books and outside the reach of international inspectors, and a consistent pattern of stonewalled inspectors with access repeatedly denied or severely restricted, raising further suspicions about the true nature of Iran's activities. The 2015 nuclear deal, formerly known as the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action or JCPOA, offered a brief glimmer of hope, temporarily slowing Iran's progress towards a nuclear weapon. However, the U.S. withdrawal from the JCPOA in 2018 under the Trump administration proved to be a pivotal turning point, leading Iran to rapidly ramp up its enrichment activities in defiance of international norms. By 2025, intelligence estimates suggested that Iran had amassed enough highly enriched uranium to potentially construct several nuclear bombs, a threshold that sent alarm bells ringing across the globe. Furthermore, Iran had also acquired the technical know-how and expertise necessary to weaponize this enriched uranium, transforming it into a functional and deliverable nuclear weapon. The final remaining step was simply a political decision, a conscious choice to move forward and assemble a complete nuclear device. For Israel, a nation that has long felt Iran's nuclear ambitions as an existential threat, the clock had nearly run out, with the window of opportunity for diplomatic solutions rapidly closing. Intelligence reports painted a grim picture, indicating that Iran was mere weeks, perhaps even just days, away from possessing a functional nuclear weapon. The threat was no longer a theoretical possibility or a distant concern, it had become an imminent and tangible danger. Israel perceived an immediate and tangible danger to its national security, a threat that demanded immediate and decisive action. The world's collective efforts to contain Iran's nuclear ambitions through diplomacy and sanctions had ultimately failed to achieve their objective. Action, Israel firmly believed, was now unavoidable, the only remaining option to prevent Iran from acquiring a nuclear weapon. For Israel, Iran is not just another regional rival, not simply a nation with differing political views or competing interests. It's viewed as an existential threat, a danger to its very being. This perception shapes almost every aspect of Israeli foreign and domestic policy and is based on the Iranians' leaders, across different administrations, consistent and explicit call for Israel's destruction. These calls have echoed for decades, becoming a constant backdrop to the Israeli experience. This is not dismissed as empty rhetoric or political posturing, it's a core, deeply ingrained part of Iran's ideology. It's systematically taught in schools, broadcast on national television, and promoted through all levels of society. Iran's rapidly developing missile arsenal with increasing range and precision, some even inscribed with explicit threats in Hebrew, serves as a constant, tangible reminder of the danger. This transforms the ideological threat into a very real and present danger. For a nation profoundly shaped by the horrors of the Holocaust, where the systematic annihilation of the Jewish people is a living memory, such threats are not taken lightly. They are analyzed, strategized against, and considered with the utmost seriousness at the highest levels of government and defense. The prospect of a nuclear-armed Iran is, for Israel, an unbearable scenario. A single nuclear weapon could devastate Israel, with a single strike potentially crippling the nation. Israel's relatively small size and extremely dense population, concentrated in a few urban centers, make it uniquely vulnerable to such an attack. The country's geography offers little strategic depth. In such a context, there's virtually no room for error, no margin for miscalculation. Even a single successful attack could prove catastrophic, leading to widespread devastation and loss of life. The convergence of a radical ideology calling for its destruction, a growing arsenal of increasingly accurate missiles, and the determined pursuit of nuclear weapons represents a nightmare scenario for Israeli security officials and the population at large. Israelis are deeply concerned by a regime that not only denies the historical reality of the Holocaust, but also openly promises what they perceive as a new one, further fueling fears of their intentions. This perceived existential threat unites the country across political divides, fostering a sense of shared destiny and common purpose. The overwhelming consensus within the Israeli government and among the public is that a nuclear-armed Iran is simply unacceptable and must be prevented. Therefore, for Israel, actively working to stop Iran from acquiring nuclear weapons is not just a matter of foreign policy or strategic calculation, it's fundamentally about national survival, the preservation of its people and its future. Iran's threat is not just future, it's present through a web of proxies. The IRGC arms and funds groups like Hezbollah, Hamas, and the Houthis encircling Israel. Hezbollah, with over 150,000 rockets, can strike anywhere in Israel. In Gaza, Iranian support enables Hamas and Islamic Jihad to launch relentless rocket attacks. Iran's proxies keep Israel under constant pressure, draining resources and threatening civilians. In Syria and Yemen, Iran opens new fronts, expanding its reach. This network projects Iranian power and destabilizes the region. For Israel, fighting these proxies is fighting Iran itself. Preemptive strikes are a last resort, but for Israel the risks of inaction outweighed all else. The Begin doctrine guides Israeli policy: never allow a hostile power to gain weapons of mass destruction. Years of sanctions, diplomacy, and covert action failed to stop Iran's nuclear march. Israeli leaders saw no rational deterrence with Iran's regime. Living under a nuclear shadow would paralyze Israel's freedom to defend itself. The attack was seen as a painful necessity, a final act to ensure survival. For Israel, it was now or never. The threat of a nuclear Iran extends far beyond Israel. A nuclear Iran would spark a regional arms race. Saudi Arabia and Turkey would likely seek their own bombs. The Middle East would become even more volatile, with multiple nuclear flashpoints. Iran, shielded by nuclear weapons, could escalate support for proxies and disrupt global oil supplies. The risk of nuclear materials falling into terrorist hands would rise. Internal instability in Iran could make its arsenal vulnerable to theft or unauthorized use. The world's non-proliferation regime would be shattered. Preventing an Iranian bomb is a global imperative. Israel's path to military action was paved by failed diplomacy. Decades of negotiations and agreements, including the JCPOA, failed to halt Iran's nuclear ambitions. Sunset clauses and loopholes meant the deal only delayed the problem. US withdrawal and renewed sanctions hurt Iran's economy but didn't stop enrichment. Iran responded by accelerating its program, mastering advanced technologies. Diplomatic efforts stalled, reinforcing Israel's belief that talks were futile. Israel faced a choice: trust a broken process, or act alone. The international community seemed unwilling or unable to act decisively. For Israel, the cost of inaction was too high. Preemption became the only option to prevent a nuclear-armed Iran. Israel had no other choice but to act now. Further delays were no longer feasible. If you found this video insightful, please like, share, and subscribe for more in-depth analysis. Let us know your thoughts in the comments below.